Hey, do you remember Project LLL? Now, I'd forgive you for not remembering due to the name alone, so don't sweat it, but regardless, first revealed a year ago last November, this is an upcoming third-person sci-fi looter shooter and is said to be the latest contestant stepping into the ring with the hopes of earning the title of Destiny Killer. Whether it does so or not, probably not, doesn't really matter. Project LLL will at least be joining the ranks of The Division, Warframe, Outriders, Borderlands, and Defiance, all games I really enjoyed. Generally speaking, if you present me with even a decent-looking looter shooter, I will want to give the game a go. I just really like this genre. Now, it's been a long time since we last talked about Project LLL, so here's a bit of a refresher. They are officially referring to this as an open-world MMO looter shooter. It will have seamless exploration, so they say, with no loading screens between zones, although we have some conflicting information with today's update, but we'll get to that. And it'll take place in an alternate reality version of Seoul, South Korea. This will include a mixture of city, wilderness, outdoor, and indoor environments, all with a touch of sci-fi and fantasy and some other dimensional stuff that's going on here. All of these spaces will be full of an assortment of enemies, primarily this faction of cyborgs and mechs, along with your typical MMO open world activities, events, points of interest, and other players, because yes, MMO is in the description of this game. So the game will have PvE with things like public events, dungeons, and raids, as well as PvP, offering both competitive modes and open world fights, so they say. Besides having third-person shooting with the standard assortment of weapons, they've also got a bunch of high-tech themed abilities. We've seen things like invisibility cloaks, scouting drones, gravity grenades, missile launchers, aimbot ultimates, jetpacks, and bullet deflecting bubbles that remind me a lot of Destiny. Vehicles will play a big role as well, with both land and air variety, as well as what appear to be these Titanfall-esque mechs that fall from the sky and can be manually controlled by the player. So those are the basics of Project LLL. Now, after the reveal last November, they had some follow-up press tour in December, but then after that, things went pretty quiet for a while. This changed, however, just the other week with us getting a brand new trailer and about 30 to 40 minutes of raw gameplay footage from a live stream, and a bunch of really interesting takeaways here with us getting a pretty clear picture of what this game is all about. But before we get into those details, as you probably know, the holidays are approaching, which means if you're anything like me, it's time to start thinking of gift ideas. One thing that might make a good gift for someone you know is the sponsor of today's video, Ridge Wallet. Ridge offers an array of compact, durable wallets built to last while also helping streamline what you carry. Now, I've been exclusively using Ridge wallets for the past, I don't know, it's been like 2 years now, a pretty long time, and I love it. The best thing for me, honestly, is just how much less room they take up in my pockets compared to previous wallets. It is slim while still carrying everything I need, which is great. They're offered in over 30 colors and styles, including leather if you're looking for a more traditional look. For gift giving, they can be customized as well with any text or design. AirTag attachments are available to help you find your wallet should you ever lose it. It's got room for up to 12 cards, plus a cash strap on the back, and with over 80,000 5-star reviews, a 99-day risk-free trial, and a lifetime warranty, it is a pretty safe bet. Now, currently, in celebration of the holidays, Ridge is having one of their biggest sales of the year. If you use my link below, ridge.com/force, you will get up to 30% off through December 20th, and just by entering your email or SMS, you can get a free chance to win a Ridge bundle worth $4,000, no purchase necessary. Now, as mentioned, we got a bunch of new stuff here to talk about. So there was, first of all, a new trailer released at G-Star 2023. This is a yearly event put on by NCSoft where they showcase a lot of their in-development projects. So the trailer opens up with a cinematic of what looks to be a player suiting up while talking to another character before dropping into the world. We see this aerial shot of the city, which showcases both weather and time of day. Starts off sunny, and then it gets to clear before a rainstorm rolls in, and then transitioning into the evening, and finally a sunrise. So it looks like we will have dynamic time of day and weather in this game. I gotta say as well, just from these shots, the visuals look really good. This game is being built on Unreal Engine 5. Also, I do believe this is the first time we've seen anything outside of the cityscape, which looks pretty good. I really do hope they utilize some of these wilderness locations because yes, it is visually appealing. There's a bunch of walking cinematic shots with the player moving through the woods, several rundown parts of the city, and even on top of the sports arena before they start sprinting, and the trailer then shifts into a showcase of various bits of combat and gameplay. We see that the player has this little boost pack, which appears to activate whenever they are sprinting, which is a nice little touch. There's quite a lot of both third and first person gunplay here. I will say the shooting looks pretty good from this showcase, much improved over the last one. I also want to point out that the audio here sounded pretty solid. Various weapons were on display, including ARs, SMGs, LMGs, shotguns, grenade launchers, and even a minigun at one point. We got a look at some gameplay inside of buildings as well. This was a really nice thing to see. Usually with a lot of open world games, you don't get too many interiors. It's pretty taxing on the whole processing, and usually it can have a big impact on performance of these games. So I'm happy to see there are at least some interiors, although we don't know to what extent. We do get some showcases of the cover system. We've seen this in prior trailers. We get some more examples of that. There's also a bunch of shots of vehicle play. So we see players taking off in a helicopter and one of them being able to hang onto the side and shoot out of it. There's also third person perspective of someone driving the helicopter, flying the helicopter, player aiming out of the side of a Jeep. And then we also get a good look at these Titanfall-like mechs. We saw this in the original gameplay trailer. We got more of it here. Now, also in this trailer, we got a sneak peek of what at first glance almost seems like a battle royale mechanic. We get footage of a character dropping in from above the map with an overhead aerial view of all these different locations and then getting to pick and choose where they land. Now, I don't believe this is a BR exactly. I think there's a good chance this is just how they handle their respawn mechanic, which was further confirmed with the stuff we're about to get into. Other stuff seen in this trailer, though, we got a few clips of what are clearly item indicators, these little square boxes pointing to items on the ground, but look to be things like attachments, ammunition, and even loot chest. Some of these are also color-coded depending on the item's rarity. And we got some clear examples of what are world quests or events with markers and beams of light pointing into the sky and players interacting with various objects in the environment. A few of the abilities we saw on display in this trailer included smoke grenades, we saw shoulder-mounted rockets, invisibility, shield bubbles, and shield walls. There was some kind of a freeze bomber ability. There was back-mounted artillery cannons that look very powerful, rooting you in place when you shoot them, and a few examples of players scanning for enemies. And speaking of enemies, a few different enemy types, what look to be these regular like cyborgy grunts. There are some tougher elite versions. We saw enemies climbing on the side of buildings. We saw helicopters that drop off loads of enemies. We saw enemy-controlled mechs, and at one point what looked to be a pretty large boss that dropped out of the sky. And then finally, as the trailer wrapped up, they go into this like paranormal, otherworldly stuff, showcasing a character walking through the subway system with these weird, like infected, otherworldly alien-looking monsters. This was also teased in some of the prior footage of this game. It seems pretty clear there's going to be some sort of fantastical elements of play, I guess beyond the fantastical nature of the rest of it. Okay, so that was the trailer. Trailer was about 5 minutes. It did give us a decent showcase, but you know, it's also highlighted and highly hand selected and all of that stuff. We actually got to see a bunch of raw gameplay as well fairly recently. As part of G-Star, they hosted a live stream where we got somewhere around 45 to 60 minutes of raw gameplay. Now, this was commentated, but it was in Korean, so I unfortunately don't know exactly what they were saying, but just by watching the footage, it was pretty clear what we can expect from this game, at least in this current build, in this current iteration. Now, before we really jump into walking through this stuff, I just want to warn you, the footage you're about to see is like super potato quality because it was picture-in-picture with a bunch of live stream stuff like around it and cameras of the people who are playing. So we're looking at a stream which is already pretty low quality with a fairly low bit rate, and then a shrunken portion of the gameplay of the screen was actual gameplay, which I will enlarge so that we can focus on the gameplay. But yeah, it's going to be pretty rough looking quality for that reason because of how it was presented and recorded and how I'm sharing it with you. But that stuff aside, let's talk about what we saw, because this is actually pretty cool and some interesting things that have left me a little more hopeful for Project LLL than I have been in the past. The gameplay starts out with us seeing a player starting out by dropping from the sky, just like we saw in that gameplay trailer. And as I initially thought, it just does seem like this is the spawn in and respawning mechanic in this game. Now, one interesting note here is you can see what clearly appears to be from the get-go some sort of parameters for the play space, or at least parameters for where the player can drop, as you notice this purple box that surrounds the city where the player is dropping in from. Now, upon landing, he starts clearing out groups of enemies just using his basic ranged weapon and some abilities. We also see this dodge skill in action, which is sort of like a short range dash or teleport. At one point, we see him cycling through a list of abilities and is actually able to swap which one is active in one of 3 slots that do appear on the bottom right of the UI. Now, after fighting above ground for a few minutes, the player then walks into this parking garage, interacting with some sort of a beacon. I just assume this is a quest objective, basically. After this completes, he heads back up above ground, and in doing so, comes across a couple of other players. Now, they don't appear to actually be like grouped up in a party, or at least there were no UI indications on the screen that would imply that there was a party going on. Regardless though, either way, while above ground, throughout the rest of the demo, this trio of players sticks together, doing a bunch of fighting and clearing out objectives. Basically just moving from one location to another, completing tasks, which most of the time have them interacting with like a computer or laptop or some sort of machinery, while also killing an assorted mix of basic and elite enemies and the occasional boss. And this was the really good stuff here because it gave us just a nice extended look at, again, what was raw gameplay. The gunplay is about what you expect. There's really not much to write home about here. It does seem well done enough and it sounded good enough as well, but just decent looking for a third-person shooter. We also saw a few abilities on display, like the back-mounted rockets. We saw a few examples of players using the cryo grenades to freeze enemies. There did also appear to be other grenades, including frag and Molotov. We saw group heals with players placing around like this AoE heal that people could just walk into. And we also saw a few examples of players using the shield bubble to prevent damage, usually because either they were low on health or because they wanted to not get interrupted while interacting with a computer, which would take like a few seconds basically to complete the interact animation. Now, beyond the basics of them just walking through the city, going to these different points of interest, and I gotta say as well, a lot of really cool spots in the city. They had like construction facilities. There was a lot of the outdoor environment, like trees and bushes and shrubbery that was like sprouting up through the city. Lots of broken down buildings and stuff. Just some neat locations. It's a nice looking city to walk through from what they showed us. But yeah, the trio players walked around, they shot things, they interacted with objectives, and from this there were a few noteworthy moments besides that basic core loop. So at one point we saw players actually looting by kicking open the trunk of a car, at which point it spit out like a bunch of currency, ammunition, and I believe some gear as well. There was a point where they approached a helicopter pad and that looked to trigger this event. Sirens started going off. The player then interacted with a terminal, after which loads of helicopters fell in, starting dropping enemies for them to fight. And then after taking them out, they actually stole one of the helicopters, jumping in and then taking off, flying it away towards another objective. We also saw them engage with what appeared to be a boss, during which the player died and got kicked back to some sort of a lobby. And here is where I basically got the confirmation that yes, those drop pods are the game's respawn mechanic. When you die, you go back into the drop pod, you redeploy falling from the sky, and you get to choose where you want to land. And in this particular instance, while they were fighting like this boss mech, the player decided to land on the roof of a nearby building, like super mega brain play there. Good job, dude. They gave the boss a go for a little while, making a few attempts, but it was evidently too tough for them to take out. And at that point, they wrapped up the first part of the live stream. So they took a little break, they did some interviews, and then jumped back into the game. I was wondering if this was going to be, them like showcasing something new and different, like a new game mode, but it appeared to basically be more of the same. They dropped in, picked a landing spot, started shooting enemies, moving around, collecting loot, and completing objectives. But during this second window, there were a few other interesting things. For one, at one point, we saw the player summon in one of those Titanfall-esque mechs in which they actually climbed in and used it for several minutes. It had a few different weapon options. There was a basic assault gun, but also what appeared to be rockets mounted on both shoulders. While in this mech, they were just absolutely obliterating and tearing through groups of enemies. A helicopter came down at one point and they like destroyed it in under a second, so this thing was clearly very powerful. They also rescued an NPC in distress. It would appear to just be kind of hanging out there. They walked up, interacted with it. It rewarded, I believe, experience and some items and currency. There was a very tough elite at one point that we saw the player actually chain CC by freezing them with those cryo either grenades or abilities, but he froze the tough enemy and then started targeting these weak points on the side of like its armor and its back, and then shooting them broke away these armor pieces. That reminds me a lot of what they did in like the Division and Division 2. Slowly broke away the armor pieces and until eventually there was no armor left and they were able to quickly take the enemy out. And then at the very end of the play session, tons of enemies started rolling in and some big event appeared to happen. There was a big warning on the screen that before cutting to a cutscene of rockets blowing up some large nearby structure. Again, I'm not entirely sure what happened. Maybe they finished a quest, or maybe there was just like the final way to wrap up the demo, more or less. Not exactly sure because, again, unfortunately, I don't speak Korean, so I couldn't tell what they were saying to describe what was going on. And that was pretty much it. Now, I will say, after sitting down and watching this nearly hour of raw gameplay footage, overall, I'm actually fairly impressed, at least a lot more so than I was expecting. My expectation level was somewhere in the middle, especially considering this is an NCSoft title. I didn't have particularly high hopes, but watching gameplay in action, seeing it play out, it seems to be shaping up to be a decent looking open world third-person shooter. Now, I didn't really get a good sense of any MMO elements because it did appear to just be a group of 3 players. If anything, it seems almost more shared world, but watching this raw gameplay did leave me more hopeful. It is better than what I was expecting. No, it didn't blow me away. If anything, I will say that the world felt a little flat. Like, beyond the enemies that spawned in, the entire play space was really static. There wasn't much movement or life to the world itself. Now, yes, it's like an apocalypse and the things are blown up and dead, but if they could breathe some more life into the play space, that would be really great, because it just felt like static landscape and monster boxes that spawned in enemies, and that's more or less what it felt like. Also, the event variety was pretty lacking. They were interacting with terminals, doing the helicopter thing, and the mechs. That was like the 3 things that ever happened in that entire hour of playtime. And I will say as well, it doesn't seem very seamless open world with that large purple barrier. In fact, during the second portion of the stream, it was pretty clear that they couldn't cross it. The players at one point walked right up to the barrier and it was a straight up wall. They couldn't go beyond that large purple beam. So that seamless open world thing with no loading screens doesn't seem to be exactly accurate. Maybe this was a restriction of this build for this live stream. I don't know, because again, I don't speak Korean, so if they made note of what that was and why it was there, I would have completely missed it. So I'm just hoping that's the case, but I'll also add as well, I was a little concerned, just in the gameplay trailers, there was pretty clearly some big frame rate and performance issues from what they showed, like in those 5-minute gameplay trailers and that initial 9-minute gameplay trailer. But this live stream, things were running smooth as butter. Like, it did look really good. I don't think I even saw any frame drops in the entire hour of gameplay, so I was pretty impressed with that. And yeah, the game certainly, at the very least, looks good enough for me to want to check it out and give it a look when the time comes. With the added disclaimer, once more, that yes, this is an NCSoft game, so we should expect all of the monetization. Every type of monetization. You just assume that it's going to be in this game. But beyond that, yeah, I'll give it a shot, because like I said, I like looter shooters. You guys know I'm a sucker for MMOs. I at least need to check them out, even if it's for a brief time. Now, as of now, Project LLL is slated for release on both PC and console at some point in 2024. No quarter or window or month or actually day given at this point, but yes, they are saying 2024, and hopefully we get some sort of beta testing prior to that to give the game a look. But that is going to do it. That's the update for Project LLL. TLDR, not super high hopes, but better than I expected, better than I anticipated. And it seems like it might be another one of those NCSoft games that's like a solid 7 to 8 gameplay wise and a 0 monetization wise. That's where I'm guessing this thing's gonna land. We'll see sometime next year. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this update. I'll see you next time. Take it easy.